everyone. I'm very excited to be here, and I just wanted to say thank you for sitting here and listening to what I'm about to say. You might be thinking, what is it, Let It Be? Maybe Beatles songs, but actually in my presentation, we're going to speak about the let function in Clojure. But allow me to introduce myself first. So my name is Ariel. I'm a software developer at Guy1. I'm also pursuing my master's degree right now in information science. I published my 5th academic article so far, and I'm working on my 8th. Apart from that, I'm also an avid baker, but we will speak about cakes later. So lately, one of the languages that I really like is Clojure. I began coding in Clojure 3 years ago, but the relationship with the language wasn't that smooth. Well, initially I felt very frustrated. What causing my frustration? Firstly, the syntax. Secondly, changing my imperative thinking to functional thinking. And lastly, the stack trace. This was a big source of frustration. But time is the key for solving at least 2 of my problems: learning and understanding the syntax and embracing the functional thinking. But what about those errors? At first, I got one error that kept on coming again and again and again. And time went by, and I started to recognize the error and what it means and how to recognize and actually solve this pattern at this error. But then more errors came and were appearing on my repo, and another one and another one. And I was thinking, how many errors are there? Maybe there aren't too many errors, and I can memorize all the errors of Clojure in my mind, and that will make my life easier. After all, we all developers, and we need to code, to debug, and understand what we're doing. Otherwise, we're AI, and not. But this error just kept on coming, different errors, different patterns, different languages, and one thing I realized that I cannot remember them all. That is when it hit me. There must be an easy a shortcut how to do better coding. I mean, seriously, every time you learn a new language, it takes eternity to become familiar with it. Then it hit me. To be a better developer, what you need to do is actually understand your errors and what they mean. This will make your life easier. So, what are we here for today? First, we will explore how to recognize patterns in your errors, and this will help us to understand our errors in different languages, not just in Clojure. And by the end of the talk, we will understand and actually we'll discuss about different approaches how to index these errors. But before we continue, let's take a break from speaking about functional programming and those kind of things and just practice a bit code samples. Let's see what you know. As a skilled developers, I think you are, I invite you all to take 10 seconds. Think what will be the output of this code. By the way, this is a JavaScript if you just don't see the code behind. Okay, 10 seconds has passed. Let's review together the code. So what we have here a function by the name of foo. Very complicated name. Also, our foo function takes 2 inputs, ALL and bar. Inside the function, we are using the for each method. It is a built-in function in JavaScript for arrays. What we want to do is to iterate over the elements of our ALL in order to invoke the bar function on each of the elements of our ALL. Since our bar is really a function, we might assume that everything is fine and our for each loop will work and everything good. but then I got this error. The reason behind this error is basically because our ARR is a string and not an array. And unfortunately, in Java strings are not having the same functionality of for each, like normal arrays in different languages that you may know. So let's take a look on the same code a bit different way. Okay, so now you have the same code, pretty much, and we updated the code. So I invite you to take now 5 seconds to figure out what will be the output of this code. Okay, 5 seconds have passed. Now in our main body, the variable bar is assigned to be a number, and instead of being a function. This is why we got this error. Fortunately, in this case, the error that we saw previously was more understandable compared to this one. Or not, maybe this one is better? Not sure, but sometimes JavaScript is not that friendly. At least this is what I heard from my JavaScript friends, developers. Those errors are not that friendly and understandable. Well, I'm not a JavaScript developer, so sorry for you. Okay, if I want to fix this code and make this code to work, all I need to do is to take our bar variable and to change it back to be a function, and then our code will work. Let's take our mind into Python. The same kind of code, different language. Now take 3 seconds. What will be the output? 1, 2, 3. Can you have that feeling what will be the output? Well, actually we have the same code as before, different language, but actually in this case, the error is much more vague than JavaScript. I'm actually surprised. But since we are familiar with the code and we know this is the same as before, we know how to solve this. So all we need to do is, what we need to do? You don't know. Okay, so all you need to do is go and change bar, and then we will be fine. So, okay, we practiced a bit JavaScript, we discussed about Python. Let's go to a bit older language, at least for me. Let's talk about Haskell. Okay, 2 lines of code, how complicated this could be. So this time we have a different code. Okay, what we have here is a function that actually returns the first letter of a string. Okay, this is the concept. If you're not familiar with Haskell, I'm not familiar with Haskell. So, since our function takes a string as an input and strings as an output, and since Haskell considers list a string as a list of characters, we can use the head function to extract the first element of our string, and then we get a single character. But what will be the output? Yeah, very helpful for someone that is not familiar with Haskell. So, what we have here? What we have here is the result of running the code that we just saw. So 2 lines of code, very informative output. So, since we're familiar a bit with patterns, we can start to have that feeling that we can see some things. And what we see here and what we can understand, that there was a mismatch between the output and what we thought will be the output of our function. So the output actually, this is the pattern that the only part that we're really interested in. The error lines that we had a failure, L, failure, with matching type X as Y. And if I would like to fix the Haskell code, the result will be going back to the function, wrapping the head with a list, and then the code will work. Why? Because it's Haskell. Don't ask me why, but this works. I don't get it. Okay, did you start to feel that there are some errors that are repeating themselves, like the big concept of them? Well, I started. So let's take a shift. JavaScript, Python, horrible Haskell. Let's talk about Clojure. Maybe Clojure you're not that familiar with. So before I start, I want to ask something. How many of you are proficient with Clojure? Raise your hand. Okay. How many are you familiar with Clojure? Okay. How many of you have never seen a line of code in Clojure? How it can be everything. Well, actually, I'm kind of surprised to see a lot of Clojure developers here, so yay. But I'm also not surprised that most of you are not familiar with Clojure. So I cannot teach you Clojure in 20 minutes. It took me a couple of good months to actually learn the language. But I just want to let you know that Clojure is a Lisp. That means that this is a Lisp processing language we use in production. And it's similar to Scheme and to Racket, if you're familiar with those kind of languages. So what I can do? What I can do is actually teach you how to bake a cake in the microwave. Yeah, but on a more serious note, when you're learning a new language, it is much more easier to see code and to try to understand it instead of trying to write from scratch your own code. So what we will do is actually, we will take a look on a code, my lazy cake in the microwave, and what we will do. So here is my code for my simple recipe for baking a cake in the microwave. So take a couple of seconds just to have that feeling. Okay. After being intimidated by the language, let me explain the concept of the recipe. Okay, so putting aside the code, just the recipe itself. What we have a few ingredients. We have flour, sugar, cocoa powder, oil, milk, all of those are ingredients. In the recipe, what we do is we combine the dry ingredients, the wet ingredients, and we combine the two together, put them all in the microwave for 3 minutes, and then you can eat. Well, if you're hungry. I won't judge you if not. So, let's talk about the code itself. Here are the 3 big parts of the code. Here I have a lot function. Well, let it be talk. We got some vector of bindings, and then we have some functions. These are the 3 main parts that we're about to talk about. So let's see again the complete code and try to evaluate this function. What will I get? I got this error. Well, this is a syntax error. We have a vector, failed, something, something. I see here a form, I see binding, I see something spec. Let's take a deeper and more, just to understand what's going on. So first thing first, what I have here, the first line, it just tells you where to look in your code base. Where is the error? Then you have the interesting part. Let's take a look inside of this. Wait, I'm jumping. Sorry. Wait, I'm messing. Okay, so this is the section that is really interesting. And oh really? Okay, so for this part I have a pattern. This is my pattern. That means that our error happened in the Clojure compilation phase. But let's see if I can use this pattern inside to understand my code. So this is the X section. That means our values. Then we have the reason the error occurred. Then we have the binding. And then we have the spec in Clojure. That means the spec library describes the structure and the data of the forms. So if I'm going back to the code, to the error message, I can actually understand what I need to do. I know that there was a mismatch inside the let section with the bindings. So let me change the code. This was the code before. I know I need to take a look in the binding. I also know that I need to do this change. Why? Because the binding needs to be an even number and not an odd number of binding. This is why I had this error. So yeah, the linter could have tell me that I need to do this error, but just to be very honest, I disable my linter before my talk and running this code, so I will show you some things. So yeah, so here is my complete code now. What will be the result now? Yeah, another error. Well, we just saw a pattern for this. Yeah, I know how to recognize what will be the interesting part, something that is related to the people to part. So let's take a look back in the code. Where do I have the people to? Yeah, this is. So since I have the A flat, I don't really interested to know how many people need to eat this cake. So basically, let me remove this part. And by making this change, my if will actually work. So let's try. This is the complete code now, updated. Another error. But you'll be surprised, I have a pattern for this that could help us how to recognize this error. Don't know how to create x from y. What happened is that Clojure tried to create y from x, but cannot do that. So in our code, x is actually ISIC and y is the core map. I know this might be intimidating, so let me just go through it very quickly. So if I'm taking a look on my code, I can see this part. This part is talking about my map, my set, my vectors, functionality, very big, intimidating words. Let me just do this change because I'm like, I know everything, or at least you think so. And now the code will work. Why? Because sometimes Clojure allows certain things comparing to others. But let's see the complete code now. Now let me pray for the gods of cake that the code will work. We got an error again. No luck today, huh? So, another pattern. What happens here is that Clojure tried to convert x into y, but failed. So if I take a look again on the error that we got, is x is a long number and y is a function. So let's take a look back on the code and see if I can recognize what's happening. This is the code, and I know that there I have a long number, and long is not a function, so let me change it. All I need to do is to remove the parentheses. Well, this was a human error, right? Sometimes they just do. But to be very honest, the error that I just saw you is just a part for the struct trace. Actually, this is how it looks. Yeah, that's a bit intimidating. Okay, going back to the code. Let's try to run this code. Okay, so I know this one. I have a pattern. We just saw that. So this was the pattern. Cannot create x from y. So let's see back the error message. Can you recognize y, x, and where they're happening? Here. Okay, so I know that I need to change my code. Okay, so from this, we're switching to this. Why? There is an order how to invoke map. You have a certain of the data structure, you have the functionality, you need to be careful what you write first. So now I'm praying, please, 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 I don't have time, let me bake my cake. Okay, I can bake my cake, my code is done, everything works. Yay! Although you're not that excited, I am. Okay, so you might be thinking, okay, Ariel, this was really cool, but I have other things, cooler things to do. What do you want me to do now? How do I recognize the error patterns? Well, I have a few DIY, do-it-yourself. First, memorize every error that you encountered in your life with your mind. Oh, well, that one didn't work for me. But jokes aside, when you see an error and you don't understand the text or straightforward what the error means, all you have to do is two things. You can decide which one. For the lazy people, just do screenshots. Screenshots directly to your folder, keep this error, and forget about it. The second one is to use Notion or any text editor that you prefer. By practicing this indexing of your errors, you'll start to recognize some of the patterns by yourself and some of the errors by yourself. This method applies in any language that you're coding, not just Clojure. You saw in JavaScript, you saw in Python, you even saw in Haskell, right? I found something in Haskell. So with time and experience, what will happen is that you'll start to recognize some of those errors, and you'll get more confident by handling your errors by yourself. And to be very honest, we all take as obvious how we can find our error in Google, right? Just copy paste our error inside Google, and we think, well, we can find our error there. So no, it's not happening every time. Sometimes we need our brain. Also, what we just saw, we saw that there are some patterns that keep returning. They are cross languages. They're not just for Clojure, not just for Python or JavaScript. And by the power of error patterns, we actually can understand our code and to become better developers. This actually what helped me to level up from a beginner to mid developer. And that is it. I hope you like my talk and being appreciated.